Hi YouTube, I'm Jordan, and for today's video I think what I'm going to do is something that I usually like to do on TikTok a lot. I'm going to do a video version of my January report, and if you're not familiar, the report stands for reading, eating, playing, obsessing, recommending, and treating. So I'm going to do that for the entire month of January. I've done it on TikTok in the style of a weekly report, but I thought it would be kind of fun to just recap my month, go over all of those things that I just said, and show you. So let's do that. Okay, so starting from the top, I'm going to review what I read this month. In the month of January, I read 5 books in total. The first one I read on my Kindle. It is called That's Not My Name by Lally. I'm gonna look at my Goodreads to kind of remember what I what I wrote about the book. So I actually ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. It was super heartbreaking. It was more of like a mystery thriller type book, which is my favorite genre of all time. When I'm reading, I love when I can't guess the ending. Those are my favorite type of thrillers because I read so many that I kind of get myself into a really bad habit of trying to guess what happens. Like, I think of the most outlandish situation possible and hope that that's how it ends sometimes. And for this one, I was kind of close to guessing the ending, but I was still on the edge of my seat the whole time. And I think that's why I gave it 3.5 stars, because I still really enjoyed reading the book. I enjoyed the plot of it. There was a few funny one-liners in there that I really liked. First one is, if all else fails, at least I like good music. Valid. Second one is pot, meet, kettle. I've said that a few times since I've read this book. And then the third one is, you know, she's talking about watching Schitt's Creek, the TV show. It says, nothing against the roses, I'd die for Moira. And I just thought those were pretty funny to throw in there into a more serious story. So that was the first book I read this year. The next book I also read on my Kindle. It was The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore. And I've had that on my TBR for a while. I was planning on reading it in December and I just never got around to it. I kind of got into a pretty bad reading slump in December. So I read it at the very beginning of January when it was still kind of close to Christmas time and it could still qualify as a winter read. I believe I gave that one 3 stars as well. It was very quick. It was a little bit cringy, but it was a very typical fun romance read. It was cute. It was a fun, like, seasonal read. Okay, the third book I read this year, also on my Kindle, and my first 5-star read of the year. Shocked, honestly, because I didn't think I was going to love this book as much as I did. I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I was never expecting to love this book so much. 5 stars, easily. I just think I've never loved characters in a book the way I loved the characters in this one. I feel like the author does a really great job of letting you get to know each of the characters. You really just kind of grow to love them like you know them. But it was so nice and sweet, and it was such a good read. And it was just the purest depiction of found family that you've ever seen. It was great. I wish I could read it again for the first time. A couple of my favorite quotes from this one. First one, there's music everywhere, Mr. Baker, you just have to learn to listen for it. The second one, a home isn't always the house we live in, it's also the people we choose to surround ourselves with. There can be magic in the ordinary, and his thoughts were all cerulean. If there's any book that you take from this recommendation, let it be that one. The fourth book I read this month, I actually have a physical copy. I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I bought this a couple months ago, honestly, and it's been on my physical TBR for a while. A friend of mine read it and she said that she didn't love it. And I was looking on Goodreads, which I only do sometimes. I look at the reviews on Goodreads, and it just didn't have the best reviews, so I was a little nervous to read it, but I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. There were so many twists in this book that I genuinely was not expecting. A couple of them I absolutely did. But then they just kept going and there was more of them. Kit, the main character, I just wanted to give her a hug at the end of this book. Like, she did not deserve anything that happened to her ever. And I think she was honestly a wonderful main character, and I think she was a great narrator for the story. So I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's not a 5-star for me, but it was pretty close. And then rounding out my books for this month, I mentioned in one of my previous videos that I started my journey with the Harry Potter series last year, and I was reading the Deathly Hallows, and I didn't want it to end, so I was putting it off. Here we are. 5 stars. I cried my way through this book. I've seen the movies a million times. But I always wanted to read the books because I know that they were different from the movies. And I really do love the books. Minus the 5th one. That's a hill I'll die on. I hate The Order of the Phoenix. The book, the movie, not the people, not the group. It was just such a heartbreaking but also perfect ending to the series. I grew to love all these characters more than I already did. And that's it, without giving like everything away if you've never seen Harry Potter or read it or whatever form you want to consume that in. It's wonderful. And it was so bittersweet because I wanted to finish it and I wanted to meet my goal of finishing the series, but I also didn't because I knew that once I reached the end of this book, it was over. And I know I can go back and relive it, but there's nothing like reading something or watching something for the first time again. So that was that. So those were my reads for this month. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so what I've been eating this month. One of my goals for 2025 was to cook more at home, and I feel like for the most part, myself and Kyle did a pretty good job of that. I have a few pictures of meals that we made. I don't have all of them, but some of them that I know I have for sure. I made garlic, chicken, and potatoes with roasted red pepper relish. I'm pretty sure I got that from a cookbook I have, and if I find that, I'll include it. Another dinner I made, chicken cutlets, rice pilaf, and sweet potato fries, which was delicious. And pretty recently, another TikTok recipe that I followed, I made creamy pesto orzo with chicken to die for. We also did burrito bowls a few times, and Kyle also did steak, potatoes, and green beans one night with his mom's recipe, and it was really, really delicious. I did also go to a couple really good restaurants this month. Kyle and I tried Don Roberto's, which is a restaurant on Staten Island that has been around for a while. I'd just never been to one. I went to Freeman's in the city with my friend Emma. Of course, we went to Hobra, and we've gotten dinner at Panini Grill once or twice too. What have I been playing this month? I like to make monthly playlists of songs that I just want to have on repeat or new songs that I find, and I'll try to do that every month, kind of. My January playlist includes lots of old Justin Bieber. I did have a pretty big Justin Bieber phase at a time, and the My World album, I had that on CD, was my absolute favorite. I went down that rabbit hole again, and then I also went down the rabbit hole of My World 2.0, and then just a couple of his other older favorites that I really loved. I've also been listening to a lot of Doechii, and the Grammys were yesterday. Girl won her first Grammy for Rap Album of the Year, which is insane. Her speech was phenomenal. What I've also been playing a lot this month, which I'll talk about later on in the video. Earlier this month, I went to see The Great Gatsby on Broadway with my friend Jill, and it was Jeremy Jordan and Ava Noblezada as the leads. Phenomenal. Like, I left speechless. So I've been listening to that soundtrack nonstop because their voices, I love Broadway. They sound like you could copy and paste the recording to them on stage, which is like what you're supposed to do. Every time I see a show and I hear the soundtrack after, I'm just in complete awe and disbelief every time, truthfully. And then rounding out what I'm playing, which isn't a music one, but my favorite podcast, I've been listening to Murder with My Husband. I love them. I think it's such an interesting podcast. Again, I love a murder, mystery, thriller, true crime, anything. So I've been listening to them, and I think it's super interesting to hear their perspective of she loves true crime and he doesn't really know about it. Her husband, whose voice in my head, he's John Krasinski. And I will never be able to get that out of my head. But I love listening to them because it feels so authentic that like we're hearing the story at the same time he is, so all of his reactions are raw and genuine, whereas other podcasts I've listened to, the responses are always scripted and it just feels less enjoyable at times because the responses are so calculated and it just kind of ruins like the momentum of the story. So that rounds out what I'm playing this month. Let's go into what I have been obsessing over. Okay, so obviously what I've been obsessing over this month is what I'm filming on right now, my Sony ZV-1, which was the first camera big purchase I've made in a really long time. I am a camera lover. I have so many cameras. I have my Polaroid, I have a point and shoot Olympus film camera, I have this gigantic older film camera, like a really, really nice one. that was gifted to me by my friend and her mom when they were cleaning out their apartment. She was going to throw it out. It is one of my favorites ever. I can't think of what the brand or the name is off the top of my head right now. Love her. I also have a Canon Rebel T3i. I've had her for about a decade when my love of photography started. So I was going to start filming on there, but the filming aspects on that camera aren't the greatest. So I was really looking for a vlogging camera because I do have an iPhone 11 still, which the quality is like fine. It's not this, but I would film on there had I any storage. I battled a lot of which brand and which type I wanted to get, and ultimately I ended up going with this one, and I'm loving it so far. I've also ordered a case for it because it terrifies me to think that I could drop it. And I also ordered the external flash, which I think is going to level this up so much for my photography loving self. This is what I'm obsessing over. I think it's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted and needed for my dream of starting a YouTube channel, which I've always wanted to do. This is what I've been obsessing over this month, in addition to all the other things I've already talked about. So let's move on. What am I recommending? I think this category always kind of gets a little bit lost for me because I am recommending everything that I've already talked about. So I think in the setting of finally starting a YouTube channel, I'm going to recommend some of my favorite YouTubers who I've watched for a really long time, a lot of whom inspired me to finally pursue my dream of starting doing this because I watch their videos and I'm super inspired and I like the content that they produce and they create. Emma Top, Amanda Politano, Hannah Elise, which is so cool. Like, those are my three favorites. I have genuinely watched three of them for years, and I've always loved their content because we're similar in age, we have similar interests, and that's something I like to watch on YouTube, is that people who are around my age who like to do similar things as me, so it makes me enjoy their content more. They are three of my absolute favorites. Also, the three of them being friends in real life has always validated for me that they're good people in real life, not just online. I'm also a huge fan of Ava Jules. Sarah Caroli, I'm pretty new to her channel, but I love reading. I think she's so sweet and I love the content that she puts out. Caitlin Ray, fan favorite for ever and ever and ever. Again, the age thing, the content she's producing, she's so funny and she's so real and I just love watching her videos. Eleanor Neal and Bella Fiore, my two favorite true crime YouTubers. Nobody tells a story like they do. Of course, Queen Zoella, the originator of YouTube. I love watching her vlogs. I feel like we've grown up with her. She does such a good job of like making people still want to watch her content all of these years later. And Santagato Studios, that's a given. I love Joe and Frankie. Kyle and I watch their videos every single time they're put out. Like the day of, we're sat on the couch, we're eating dinner, we're watching Santagato Studios. And then to round out this video of my January report, here is what I'm treating myself to this month, or what I did treat myself to in January. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to see a Broadway show this month, and my friend Jill has a theater degree. We are besties from college, and she lives on Long Island, so we don't see each other super often, in addition to being nurses and never having a singular same day off. We went to see The Great Gatsby on Broadway. It was phenomenal. Like I said, Jeremy Jordan, Ava Noblezada, who are both not in the show anymore, so I'm so lucky that we got to see them. Like I said, also, I've been just going out to dinners this month. I know my goal was to cook more at home, but I also had some time off from work, which is when I vlogged that first video. So I just kind of treated myself a lot during that week, going out to eat, seeing friends, catching up with people, just kind of doing more out of the house so I wasn't stuck here since I wasn't traveling. I treated myself last week to a car wash. It has been snowing in New York yet again. We just had snow for weeks and it just wasn't going away. My car looked disgusting and it snowed again yesterday, so I treated myself to a car wash that I so desperately needed. Of course, I treated myself to this new camera this month. I treated myself to a couple new sweaters. I've been having such a hard time finding a good winter wardrobe that I feel comfortable wearing and that will actually keep me warm when it was 7 degrees in New York 2 weeks ago. So I found a few on Amazon that I really actually like quite a bit. And then the last thing I treated myself to this month is my new Kindle case. This is her. She is from Paperback Fable Company from Etsy. It's obviously, if you know, you know, Harry Styles themed. I think it's beautiful. It's got this really pretty shimmer. It's like different tones of pink with cherries and hearts and flowers and butterflies, and it's just very pretty. And on the inside, I got the version with the strap on the inside because I previously had a pop socket on my Kindle. So I got the version with the strap on the inside so that I can hold it, you know, like so when I'm reading. This one also has a feature that wakes up your Kindle when you open and close it, which I think is very cool. And I'm a very big fan. So I think that about rounds up my January report. This is super fun for me. I'm still getting used to talking to the camera by myself. I really like a vlog style, but I'm not doing anything today, so we're trying this out. I also have to get used to looking at the lens and not the viewfinder. We're working on it. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. This was super fun, and I'll see you soon. Bye.